Okay. Well, this is Catherine O'Brien, and I'd like to welcome you to this presentation of the Keys to College. I want to congratulate you on taking time today to learn more about how to find a great college at a great price. Getting into and paying for college is nothing like it was when we parents went to school. There's so much complexity to it. I've read hundreds of books and spent thousands of hours studying the subject, taking classes, meeting with other professionals in the field, and I'm eager to share with you what I've learned. During this webinar, I can only touch on a few of the basics, but will show you at least 4 ways to save $20,000 or more. I will point out these hot tips during my presentation. Be ready to take notes. If you have questions, please enter them into the chat box. I will take time to answer them at the end of the webinar. I have a special gift for you, which is the 100 most generous colleges in America. I'll give you information at the end about how to get that. Colleges are businesses. We don't tend to think of them that way, but they're businesses and we are customers. Years ago, when I realized that, it was a huge shift for me. No longer do I approach this as the underdog trying to prove the student's worth so they can be allowed in. And I came to realize that financial aid, by and large, is just another form of a coupon. Colleges want bragging rights to our kids' achievements, and we've all heard their boasts, having such a percentage of minority students, so many merit scholars, et cetera, et cetera. They also want our money. That's been particularly clear in the last few years of the public universities in California. Out-of-state students and international students pay quite a bit more, and more of them have been being accepted. And the regions just put forth a statement that they're going to cap it at 20%. Well, they've got a lot more that they can take before they get there. So that's how they're balancing their books. And of course, we parents are looking for a great education for our children at the lowest possible cost to us. So our goal is completely at odds with the college goal. And there are professionals at most colleges whose sole job, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, constantly, to strategically manage enrollment. So they make their revenue goals and they fill their classes in their dorms. Smart parents even things up by working with a college consultant like me. Allow me to briefly introduce myself. I grew up in Chicago, in the southwest suburbs. We were called Southside Irish. And I got to go to White Sox games when I did well at school. I got vouchers to go to White Sox games growing up. But when I was finishing high school, although I was graduating at the top of my class, I had absolutely no idea what to do in college. I knew I should go, but where and to study what. And back then, the only career counseling I got at the high school was when they had us all take the ASVAB, which was a placement test for the military. So I applied to 4 schools, Harvard and Yale for my mom, and Northwestern and Cornell, well, just because. Happily, Harvard and Yale did not accept me, and Northwestern was closer, so that's where I went. I started as a chemistry major, same major as my mom, because I really had no idea what to do. But I quickly realized that chemistry wasn't my thing. Luckily, a generous professor helped me find another field. I transferred from the College of Arts and Sciences to the Technological Institute. I went on the Easter retreat my senior year. I'd started interviewing and wasn't liking any of the prospective jobs, nor was I getting offers. On that retreat, I was finally able to own that I didn't like industrial engineering. I wanted to do some sort of ministry, something related to my faith, and I wanted to work with people, not numbers. So I stopped interviewing. I graduated, then worked for a couple of years, part of that time for a church. And I was finally working with people, and I really enjoyed it. With the church's support, I went off to grad school, which I loved, despite being desperately poor. A couple of years later, I graduated with a master's degree in theology. Fast forward a few more years and several kids, and I found myself homeschooling. The other moms, whose kids were older than mine, started asking me for help with the college prep process. And after a little while, I found a mentor, and I founded Celtic College Consultants in 2004. Since then, I've written a book, which is available through Amazon, I've spoken at countless conferences, I've taught my peers, and I've worked with teens all across the country. I just do not want young people to have to flounder around like I did, trying to sort out what they want to do, what to study, etc. I have a passion for helping teens discover themselves and working with them to start to develop their skills and abilities to become the person they were created to be. I'm also passionate about keeping the costs as low as possible. Here's one example of how I was able to help a teen. Dana wrote to me last year and said, I just wanted to thank you for your help last year. Ryler got a full ride offer from the University of Alabama, Huntsville, and was accepted into the Honors College. He's pretty excited about the school. Thanks so much for your guidance and help. Hope you and your family are well. It's really exciting to get those things, to get that concrete confirmation that all the hard work that we put in, setting goals and everything else, came to fruition, and the child is making his next steps. So today we're going to talk about the 3 keys to admissions and scholarships. First, we'll talk about admissions and student preparation, and then we'll explore many powerful options to lowering college costs and increasing your financial resources. And then lastly, we'll talk about scholarships. There's different kinds, how to get them, and where to find them. At the end, I'll answer your questions. Along the way, if you want to enter them into the chat box as they come up, I'll look them over and answer them at the end of the presentation. And remember to stick around so that I can give you the 100 most generous American colleges and universities. So our first step, before we go further, I have a couple warnings. When I talk with parents all across the country, many seem like they're looking for a golden ticket, some sort of magical pass to getting accepted and getting all the money they hope for. Unfortunately, such a thing doesn't exist. And others hope that by learning about the process, working with a college consultant like myself, that they will get college absolutely free. On occasion, a student will be offered a full scholarship. However, it's rare. And still other parents openly scoff at me when I tell them in my last 2 graduating classes were offered an average of $225,000 and $255,000 each in merit scholarships. So our goal is to help our child get accepted at a great school and win scholarships. In order to achieve that goal, we need to know what's required. Then we can plan. So let's get started. Astonishingly, I have met many parents who've told me they'll just send their child off to college and let him or her explore various fields and sort out what they'd like to do. In fact, I was on a campus visit today with one of my children, and that's exactly what the admissions reps suggested. Scratch off all the majors that we offer that you're not interested in. And then, the ones that are left, start taking classes kind of randomly in those. And I'm thinking, that's a great ticket to taking 6 years to get your bachelor's degree. It's really expensive to explore your options that way. We're going to discuss ways to do that at a much lower cost, both in terms of time and money, and frankly, frustration. First, we need to know why we're going to college. And once we know the goal, we could create a plan, whether it be trade school, engineering school, preparing for graduate school, whatever. And we can also determine what the perfect college looks like. Now, admissions. 70% of the admissions decision is based on academics, while 30% is based on personality and extracurriculars. Personality might sound funny, but it means are you a good fit for the college or university? The top 2 criteria for admissions at every school are related to your academic credentials. Test scores show how you do under pressure. Grades show your day in and day out ability to perform over time. And your course choices show how dedicated you are to challenging yourself. And at your more selective schools, that's very, very important. So hot tip number 1, make sure you pick some schools where you'll be in the top 10 to 25% academically if scholarships are a part of your college funding plan. And give some serious thought to the impact of the academic fit on the student's confidence. Even a student with a super high ACT score or SAT score is going to struggle with their confidence at a school where they find themselves academically average. For some students, that's just not an issue. For others, that can be kind of crushing. So we want to be careful. And since test scores are key determinants for admissions, and frankly, for an awful lot of scholarships,
they literally say, if your score is this, you get this much money. If your score is so many points higher, you get that much money. So there's straight correlation, that table that they use. So test prep is not optional. There are 4 ways to prepare. You can get a live tutor to come to your house or meet you someplace, or even a virtual tutor, one-on-one. This is the most expensive option. It can be really good, and it can be not a good fit. So your highly experienced professional tutors that do this not just kind of as a side thing while they're in college are very expensive and very good. So that works for some people. Many people choose to have their child take a group class, either live or online, and they're also pretty pricey. $1,800 is not uncommon. And the students are crammed into small rooms, and they get whatever the presentation is, middle of the road. Here are the basics of the math section and the reading section, and here's basic strategy, and we're done. And whatever their particular strengths are, they're still going to have to go over those and wasting their time. And then their weaknesses, they're not going to get extra time. So it's a good overview, but it really doesn't address the individual needs of the students. Now, you can also study on your own, buy a book. It's the least expensive way to do it. However, most students do not know at all how to pace themselves through it, how to evaluate their answers, how to infer the weaknesses that they need to work on, develop strategies to overcome them, all that. So you can only get so far with private study because you really know everything you know at age 16 or 17, and you're trying to tutor yourself, and you've never done this before. So it's got some limitations. And then there's tutorial classes. And these are online test prep courses that are based on tutorials. So the research shows that the most effective technique is to familiarize yourself with the test. Second to that is to hone your skills. Personally, with all the programs I've looked at, I love ePrep's online tutorial-based test prep courses because they not only utilize those 2 most effective techniques, their prices are very, very reasonable. Next week, I will mail all of you a coupon for 20% off any of their courses as a thank you gift for your taking the time to attend today. If you need it sooner, just drop me an email. Colleges also want to know what else you did with your time and what makes you tick. These factors will make or break your application if you're academically qualified. Getting into highly selective colleges requires some additional special factors. So for more information, email me, and I'll send you a link to the recording of my recent webinar on elite college admissions. So you want to develop a hook, whether that be a sport or a special skill. For some people, their ethnicity or their gender is, as a woman going into engineering, we are a minority, and minorities do not include Asians for the college admissions situation. So we're looking at Native Americans and Hispanics and African Americans. Or international students. You don't really develop that one. A deep academic interest, going above and beyond your classes and really exploring, and that will show up in a number of different ways. And being full pay. They, of course, are trying to balance their books. So if you can pay full freight, that is going to help you in admissions in most places. Some schools are what they call need blind, and they won't see the financial situation for the students, but most schools do look at that at the same time as they're making admissions decisions. Gabriella is a young lady from San Diego whom I worked with a couple of years ago. She had low test scores and was a very poor writer, yet she received significant scholarships from prestigious schools. She knew her strengths, I helped her showcase them, and that resulted in her being accepted and offered good scholarships. She's off at art school now and doing very, very well. There are many factors to consider when you're selecting prospective colleges. To find the right fit, you're going to need to do a lot of research into these and other factors. You want to look at the majors and the concentration within the majors, the programs that might be study abroad or internships, different programs that are offered, the social fit. Is it, for example, I took my son to a small liberal arts college. He just hated it. And there was nothing wrong with the school at all. But for him, just the milieu just was not the right one for him at all. Academic fit is another really important thing. If you have, a 1200 SAT and their middle 50% is,
1,500 to 1,200, you're not a real strong candidate. You're a real weak candidate for that school. So you want to make sure that you've got schools you are really going to get into and schools that are a solid fit. And then geographically, for some people, it could be whether it's urban or rural or small town, or how far away from home it is. Most people go to college within 100 miles of home. Some of our kids are much more willing to stretch their wings and go further away. And there's a whole variety of correctness, and it depends on each student. So there is no best college. But there's a lot of different facets is what I'm trying to get at as far as you doing the college selection piece. 63% of students apply to 6 or fewer colleges, and 11% apply to only one school. That really limits their chances for admission and getting the best scholarships and aid possible. Hot tip number 2 is a good rule of thumb is to apply to 8 to 12 schools. Now, there are a number of applications that the colleges use. So you're only going to send one application to each college. However, there are different application processes or forms, so to speak, that you can use. They offer different ways for students to showcase their achievements, and it's imperative that you know what they are and make the most of them. Remember, many schools will accept more than one type, so you want to choose wisely. So you've got the common application, there's the universal college application, there's the coalition application, and then individual schools have their own. The UC schools in California have their own, the Cal State schools have their own, the Apply Texas program, Iowa's got one. A lot of states will have for their public universities, they'll have this group application that they use for all of the campuses. So you'll need to look at the options, because on the admissions page, they'll tell you which ones they accept and what's the best one for you to present your achievements so far. And application essays differ. The prompts are going to be different on each of the different applications, and some of them have supplemental, which are particular to the school, and the common applications, which would be the 3 that you see on the screen there. And all of that comes into play too as you're trying to choose which prompt you can use to best express what you need to tell admissions. And writing application essays differs completely from every other form of writing. So all of these areas are specialties of mine. College selection, application strategy, application preparation, and essay creation. Let's look at application strategy. So there are basically 4 different programs that colleges offer for you to apply. So you have early action, which has an early deadline, typically November 1st, but every school is different. And it's non-binding. So you get your application materials in early, you get the decision early, but you have until May 1st to make a decision about whether or not you're going to go to that school. And then there's early decision, and some schools have 2 rounds. So we call it early decision 1, early decision 2. They'll have 2 different deadlines. That's binding. On that application, you're signing a contract that if I'm accepted, I'm going to your school. I will withdraw all the rest of my applications. So it's strategic to use that at certain times, and for certain students, it's really not a good idea. So you need to know what makes sense for all of that. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just realizing that there was a technical issue and you were not seeing the updated slides. So yes, this video will be up on YouTube later. I will be sending everyone a link to the recording. And given that the slides didn't progress, I will probably record it privately and send you a link to that so that you have the correlating slides. My apologies for not noticing that sooner. Okay, and then colleges, one thing I wanted to tell you, okay, regular decision is regular decision. So some schools, that's the only date that they offer. Others will have the early programs, and then they have what they call regular decision later on. Those are typically January, February, March, sometimes later. And then rolling is a little bit tricky. That means they'll accept them kind of any time. And that's good and that's bad, because you tend to think, oh, I can push it off and do it later, but early is better. So for the schools that are using the early action or early decision programs, I want to make sure that you understand that they typically fill 40% of the seats in the freshman class.
So that leaves only 60% of the seats for the regular decision pool, which is a much larger pool of students. The admissions rates are much higher for the early programs than they are for later, but you also have all your cherry-picked students, your recruited athletes and that sort of thing. The special category students are going to be in the early round because that's the way that admissions does that. So the advantage as far as admissions rate isn't exactly what it looks like when you compare the numbers. I want to talk a little bit about student development because this is another key area needed for admission and definitely needed for success on campus. The president of the Association for Colleges and Universities has spoken several times about how woefully prepared students are when they get to campus. They just have no idea how to live on campus and function. And so all of these different skill areas are going to come into it. Independent learning, you're going to really see that for your top tier schools. They're going to be looking for that, going above and beyond, being able to self-direct their time and all that sort of thing. Your personal skills, you're going to see in a lot of ways, but in planning your whole college career, but also living in the dorms. Can I set goals? Can I be aware of how I'm interacting? Can I adjust when I've got a problem with my roommate? All of that sort of thing, planning my time. And then self-management is a whole other area. So there's just a lot of skills that kids need and that we need to be making sure that they develop as they are going through high school. So let's talk about lowering costs. Oh yeah, and don't forget, at the end of the presentation, I will take a few minutes to answer your questions. So put them into the chat box when you have a moment. And you may have heard from your friends and relatives about how they or someone they know took on massive parent loans and their students took big loans too. This has been in the news a lot, so people are pretty aware of this, but currently college graduates with debt, which is about 3/4 of them, have an average of over $30,000 in debt. It just doesn't have to be this way. So we have looked at how to prepare a good student applicant. So let's look at ways to lower costs. So first, it is essential that the student have goals. Without these, it's impossible to determine a good college fit. And there's so many good aspects to a good college fit, as we've already seen, and the financial fit is one of them, and there'll be some more criteria that I will show you later on. But I want to point out here how to increase your costs before we get into lowering them. So the cost of changing a major when it adds a year to the process of getting a bachelor's degree means an extra year of college costs, and I'm using the average here, and then the lost income. So the difference between what you get as a high school grad and what you get as a college grad is the information, is the number I use there for a year. So it's almost $50,000 if you have to go fifth year. If you transfer schools, and many students do this, often they end up going 2 extra years because the credits don't transfer over, the school won't accept them, they have got different criteria and requirements, and so it can cost it's 2 extra years and $100,000 of loss, extra costs and lost income. So it's real important that work be done during high school to really narrow the student's focus, get some clarity about what direction they're going in. If they want to adjust a major like I did from chemistry to industrial engineering, all the beginning prerequisites are the same, lots of math and lots of science classes. So I could move into doing that, and I did that my freshman year. But it's, you can't move very far and be able to bring everything with you, even on the same campus. Okay, now that we know the main thing to avoid not to increase the cost of a degree, let's look at some ways to reduce the time it takes to earn your degree, therefore significantly reducing your costs. To earn college credits during high school, there are 4 possible avenues. 5, sorry. AP tests happen every year in May. There are over 20 different subjects for AP tests in areas such as various foreign languages, history, economics, math, science, computer science, art. And these can be taken whether or not an AP class is taken. They're only offered at brick and mortar schools. So homeschooled students are going to need to make arrangements in January or February to take them on local campuses. And then depending on your scores, different colleges have different policies about what they'll accept and what they will use to supplant their requirements for degrees.
The IB exams, they offer 2 different levels of those, and some colleges will only take the standard and some will want the more advanced version. And so you need to really check the policies to see, and that's the International Baccalaureate programs that some high schools have put on to their curriculum. It's a big shift for a high school, so there aren't that many that have done it, but the upper level International Baccalaureate exams are widely accepted. CLEP exams are a second set of tests offered by the College Board, which is the SAT people, and over 2,900 colleges and universities give college credit for good scores on these tests. There are 33 of these tests, and they are developed as college equivalency tests. They can be taken all year round and in many, many, many locations. So you'll need to go to the College Board to explore those and see where you could take them. And also, of course, as you're looking at colleges to see, are they going to accept the credits? The DSST tests, a lot of people haven't heard of them. That's getcollegecredit.com is their website. And these were set up initially for military and people with business experience who are coming back to college so that they could get some credit for what they know from their professional experience. And so you will find a wide spectrum of offerings. You'll have accounting and law enforcement and some health profession things. There's quite a variety of tests there. And over 1,900 colleges and universities accept those scores for credit. And high school students are welcome to take these tests. So as I said, it's getcollegecredit.com is their website, and you can look up there both information about the tests as well as the colleges that will accept those scores. And then lastly, dual credit, or dual enrollment, sometimes called dual credit. It's possible to take college courses while a high school student. In some circumstances, there won't be any cost to the family. Every state has differing policies on tuition for high school students, but some completely cover everything, some cover it all in books, some give a discount, some don't do anything. So you'll need to explore that. And those classes tend to be accepted at a higher rate than the tests, but again, it's going to depend on the college or university you end up taking. And it's a great way to take, all of these are great ways to get college credit at a small fraction of the cost. For the tests, we're under $100 for each of those tests, and to get 3, 4, 5 credit hours for $100, yeah, you can't do that on campus. Dual enrollment, depending on how that goes, you may not be paying anything. So very, very beneficial. So here's a hot tip, kind of more of a strategy, but high school students with college credits earned before they graduate from high school are still considered first year or freshman applicants for college. And you'll see on a lot of the websites, they're not calling them freshmen anymore, they're calling first year. And so when college credits are earned after graduating high school, then in most cases, and some colleges have different policies about how many credits before they consider them a transfer, but most often if they have any after high school graduation, they're considered transfer. Most of the scholarship money and most of the seats in the graduating class are for freshmen, first year students. They're not as many for transfer students. So piling up college credits that you can take with you as a first year student, and so you'll be accepted as a first year student, and then they will send your courses and test scores and all of that over to the registrar. You'll get appropriate credit. And so you might be a first year student with sophomore standing, or second semester freshman standing, or junior standing. Some students are getting AA degrees while they're in high school. And so they'll graduate high school today, and tomorrow they'll graduate with their AA or their AS degree. So there's a lot of savings that can be put together. So if you graduate one semester early, you're going to save about $42,000. That's a saved cost, college cost, plus the extra earnings of working that 6 months. If you can graduate a whole year early, it's about $84,000. Again, saved college costs, and this is average. So if you're at an expensive school, you'll be saving even more. And then working for a year. And that's an average number. So I'm using actual numbers. I didn't make these up to say, oh yeah, we're going to make a ton of money. We all know that that fluctuates depending on circumstances and the degrees that the students are getting. But that's the average for newly minted college grads. Another thing that a lot of students don't look at is graduation rates. And so I really wanted to talk about this. So this hot tip can be worth about $50,000, because most people miss this. you must explore graduation rates. Most of the published ones are for 6 years, not 4, so you're going to have to look. I'll call it for 150% of the time. So for an AA, that'd be 3 years, and for a bachelor's, that'd be 6 years. So you want to be careful. And here's an example. San Diego State University has a strong international reputation, but they have a 33% 6-year graduation rate. So that means for a beginning class, in 6 years, a third of them will have graduated. That's terrible. And all of these records are not exactly correct because they don't take into account transfer students very well, but they're all pretty close. So you want to be careful. At the same time, San Diego State's Honors College, they have a 77% 4-year graduation rate. And you do need to look, people assume, oh, it's a big state school or a big school, or it's got a great reputation, so it must be okay. I've seen single-digit schools. I've seen many schools under 50%. You would be absolutely astonished. And it does make a difference because the peer group your child is in makes a difference. If everybody's transferring out, they're going to be more likely to transfer out. If everybody's going 5-6 years because they're kind of a little bit more laid back, that's going to happen. If they're going 5 or 6 years because there aren't enough seats in the required classes, that's likely to happen too. And so then you go drill down by the major and see, 4 kids in this department, does that happen? And that can be a problem a lot of different places. I've seen it in many California schools, and today we were at a Midwestern school and they had the same issue. They've had so many students and so much growth in my son's interested in that they just physically do not have enough seats or big enough classrooms. And so kids are not able to get the classes that they need to move forward. And so that's causing them to take longer. And the school has a 4-year graduation promise that they keep, and they have not included that major for that reason. Okay, let's take a look. There are regional tuition reduction programs. There are about 6 or 7 states in the country that do not participate in these, but most of them do. So you want to look them up. So pick your region and go look up later which states and which schools in those states participate. And if you aren't in the state, like Iowa, for example, doesn't participate in this, but there are some local, not full state, but local regional discount programs that are eligible, and students can be eligible for. Students who go to live in one of the states and go to a college or university in another one of the states that's participating in the program in a major that's qualifying for, because sometimes they eliminate things like nursing that are very popular, they will typically pay 150% of in-state tuition, which can be a savings between $3,000 and $10,000 a year. So that's between $12,000 and $40,000 you saved. But the devil's in the details. So for example, I worked with a California student just a couple of years ago. She was applying to a 5-year program at an Arizona university. That was part of the WUI program. She did her application, and then the family had me review it. As she had completed it, she would not have qualified for the discount since it was limited to certain majors. So this way she did it, it would have been $39,000 a year. There was a 5-year program she was in, so it was going to cost $195,000 for the degree. I made some adjustments to very similar majors so she could still study the same things, but ones that were part of the WUI program. Now the cost of attendance went down $9,000 and something a year, and they're going to spend $149,000 instead of $195,000. They saved $46,000. That's a good deal. So that's the kind of savings that can be had should that program using that work for you. Many of you have heard of the FAFSA form. It's the free application for federal student aid. And this is what determines need-based aid. So your Pell Grants, your student loans, your parent loans, all the federal programs are going to be based on this. Many of the states also base their grant programs on the information from the FAFSA. It's going to take income and asset information from the parents and the student and come up with a number that they call the expected family contribution, or EFC. The difference between that and the cost of attendance for a year is the amount of need that you can get financial aid for, which is great. However, not all schools meet 100% of need.
And that can be a problem. So let's take a moment to compare two rival Midwestern schools, the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana and Northwestern. Now, I went to Northwestern, so that's why I picked these two schools. And they are big-time rival schools. They both have excellent engineering and number of programs. So they compete a lot on the academic side. So in-state tuition is just under $30,000. And for my sample family, I used $5,000 for the EFC. And so they need $24,000. Their percent need met is actually quite good for a public university at 66%. And the mix of the way that they meet that need is gift aid, or things you don't have to pay back, is 2/3, and then self-help, which is student work study and loans, is the other third. I always consider this, as we're roughing things out as we're estimating things before we select colleges, as all loans. If they end up putting work study in there, that's great, that helps, but it's always best to be prepared for the worst. So their out-of-pocket cost was going to be $13,000, which is the cost of attendance minus the financial aid. But the true cost when you add the loans back in is $18,600. So Northwestern, as we know, is atrociously expensive, and these numbers are a year or two out of date. But the principle still is exactly the same. Same family with the EFC of $5,000, so they need $58,000. Now, most families would say, we're too poor, there's no way, we're not going to bother, so they don't even apply. However, Northwestern meets 100% of need, and they use 85% of gift aid, money you don't have to pay back. And then only 15% is self-help. So it's going to be work study and loans. So their out-of-pocket cost, according to the formula, is $5,000. When you add the loans back in, it's $13,700. So both, as far as cash flow, it's much cheaper, and as far as the overall true cost, it's also cheaper to go to the school that's more than twice as much, because they meet 100% of need as opposed to 66%. This stays true that Northwestern, with the bad boy tuition rate, is cheaper until the family contribution is higher than the total cost at University of Illinois. So I go through this in detail so that you can really see that you do need to find out the percent need met, because it just makes a huge difference in what your net cost is going to be. And you don't want to forget to check with your tax preparer. There are tax credits and deductions that you might be able to be eligible for during your tax years with a student in college. It's also true for your student. So sometimes you both can have lower tax payments, which frees up money to pay for college. So we call those tax scholarships. Another hot tip for you is a website which is helpful for finding graduation rates, average net costs, and average salaries after graduation. Is called the College Scorecard, and it is a creation of the Department of Education. So I'm not remembering the URL right now, but it'll have collegescorecard.ed.gov or something, but it'll end in .ed.gov, because that's the Department of Education in the federal government. So that's College Scorecard as a place for you doing research. Whew, we have covered a lot of information. So let's take a look at a few more factors to consider when selecting colleges, because a financial fit is just as important as the academic fit. So scholarship opportunities, graduation rates, cooperative education programs. That's most common in things like engineering, but it still exists in a few other places. And that's where the program actually takes 5 years, because they take a semester of 1 year and a semester of another year, and they actually go work at a job in their field, and they get paid. So it lowers the cost, even though it extends the time, but they also walk out usually with jobs, and they've got work experience. Internships can do the same thing. The percent need met we went over, the tuition reduction programs we went over, and then you also want to look at postgraduate placements and salaries, and that's something that can be researched sometimes as well. And you want to ask a lot of pointed questions when they try to say, 95% of all of our graduates have, a job or gone to graduate school in a certain amount of time, because there are ways to play with statistics, so that's not always truly accurate. And you really want to find out, well, my student's looking at, these 3 or 4 majors, what's going on in those? What companies are coming onto campus looking for employees in those fields? Are there internships available? All that sort of thing. So you really want to be asking and diving deep when you're looking into that. So there were
more than 4 strategies in that last section that could each yield $20,000 or more in savings. But it's time to look at scholarships, which is where you probably thought you could find the most money, but you've seen there are lots of other ways to lower the price of a degree. So let's see what we can add to the savings we've already found. This is a graph, of all the sources of financial aid except private loans. A few years ago, they took that off the graph because the piece was too big. So we're not going to go through all of them, but please note the peach wedge up there in the upper left, and it's marked, if you can see, private and employer grants, that's 6%. It used to be 2 separate slices of the pie, and a few years ago they started reporting them together because it was difficult to show private scholarships alone, since they just make up over 1% of the pie. Those are the Coca-Cola and the Walmart scholarships and all those other things that you hear advertised. And then I want you to look at the rosy wedge on the lower right. That's from what are called institutional grants, and it's 22% of the pie. That's some serious money. But what is it? Most people have no clue. These are grants, scholarships, and tuition reductions from the colleges themselves. And one more thing to consider, private scholarships reduce your eligibility for need-based aid dollar for dollar. They're considered a resource in the formula, and so they have to take it out. You can't get more aid than the cost of attendance. So oftentimes they don't really help. Hot tip, 93% of all scholarship dollars come directly from the colleges and universities. So where do you think you should look for college scholarships now? Let's take a few minutes and discuss merit scholarships. I think you know the basics. They might have a special application. They're given for a reason, academics, leadership, athletics, etc. Earlier, I mentioned developing hook for admissions. Those hooks also become reasons to be awarded merit scholarships. So when you search for colleges, look for scholarship opportunities related to the student's skills and abilities and interests. There's another major reason colleges award aid. As I mentioned in the beginning, scholarships are really coupons. So large research universities tend to be well known and have little incentive to give out aid. So the percentage of students receiving merit awards is relatively low. Tufts, I'm sorry you can't see it very well, it's 36%. But then you have master's colleges like University of Dallas and Creighton. They're not as well known outside their region, and these are schools that offer bachelor's degrees and master's degrees but don't offer doctorates. And so they are highly incentivized to give coupons. And so all or nearly all of their students are receiving merit awards. And yeah, the school that I went to that actually didn't show up in my research, but my son's first college visit was at a school, and they cost about $42,000. And then at the end of the admissions thing, the little tour guide said, well, you know, everybody gets between $12,000 and $22,000 off the bat, every single student here. So their cost really is $30,000. And some students are going to get a $10,000 scholarship. But for whatever reason, they do it this other way. But that's how they do it. Liberal arts colleges, again, are not as well known. You can get wonderful education at many top-notch liberal arts colleges, and they're giving away money because they need students to come. However, on the other end of the spectrum are these top-tier schools, and this is not the full list. They give no merit aid whatsoever. However, they give very generous need-based aid. So now you can hopefully see the power and many facets of it, of strategic college selection and the necessity of filing that FAFSA form. As I said, some schools require it for all aid. So even though you may not get any need-based aid, some schools won't give you any merit aid because they say, well, if you didn't file the FAFSA, you're telling us you can afford to pay full freight. So we're not going to worry about it. You can just pay full price. So if you don't want to pay full price, file the FAFSA. So it takes time and lots of coaching to guide a student to identify his or her goals, develop his or her skills and talents, and to prepare him to be successful in college admissions and on campus. It takes skill to put together the best college list for a particular student. And then the whole financial planning takes time and expertise as well. For the past 12 years, I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of families from all across the country. Some of my students have been homeschooled, while others have attended expensive private schools. Many have gone to public schools. I've helped families with very modest means, good solid income, and well-to-do families. Each student and family has different needs and priorities. I don't know if you can read it very well. The dollar bills are overwhelming everything else, but my efforts have had good results on the financial side in addition to the student preparation side. So my class of 26 students were offered an average of $255,000 overall, which is $75,000 per school. And they have goals. So they're going to graduate in 4 years, not 6, which will save $50,000 for not going extra years, right? And then the US students, because I had some international students in here, they average 12 college credits while they're in high school, which is saving about a semester. So that's about $30,000 because they are on track to graduate a semester early. So those are some of the fruits that come out of what I do. Families in my one-on-one consulting program have benefited the most, as have those who started early in the high school years. Freshman year is ideal, especially for those hoping to attend a selective college. Starting as a sophomore can yield good outcomes as well, absolutely. Starting as a junior can give a successful outcome, but the student's going to be, I'm going to be rushed. It's their most intense year of high school. Nonetheless, there are definite benefits to being coached through the application process, having somebody vet your college selections, all of that. I meet with my private consulting students at least once a month. We talk about academic prep and goal setting, college selection, going through the application process. What we talked about in this presentation, lowering costs and maximizing the need-based aid, maximizing the scholarships so that the net cost is as low as possible for that family, for the best education possible for that student in their style, what they want to study, all of that. A note from Mike, worked with him a couple years ago, and he still writes me letters. He wrote, Catherine O'Brien's assistance has been invaluable. That is impossible to put a price tag, as she has opened up a world of possibilities for my son, Christopher. Ms. O'Brien was able to do more for Christopher in 3 months than I was ever able to do in years working with his 3 older siblings, researching the best colleges for just the right fit. And he's not the only one I've heard this from. I've had many, many parents say that to me that had older children. And just because this is what I do all day long. There's absolutely no way for even the most involved parent to do anywhere near what Ms. O'Brien has done in narrowing down the colleges which best fit my son, after considering all the factors: academics, athletics, financial aid, majors of interest, postgraduate ambitions, career ambitions. I cannot say enough about the value which Ms. Catherine O'Brien brings to the extremely complicated process and pressure-filled task of college and scholarship searching. She's removed a huge load from my shoulders. She's worth her weight in gold. Thank you, Catherine. Mike Chavarria, he works for the Department of Justice in Dallas. His son ended up with a couple of full ride offers. He is currently studying abroad. He's been doing phenomenally well. He's well on track for getting into graduate school as he had planned, because we did all that pre-work. So I'm just delighted to see Christopher take all the work we did and continue through his college and continue to succeed and do well. To discuss your situation with me personally, as well as get your important questions answered, please sign up for a consultation on my website, CelticCollegeConsultants.com. If you can either put this URL in with Meet With Us, or if you go scroll down on the homepage, you will see there's a 1, 2, 3 going across. Under number 2, there's a button to Meet With Us. You'll fill out the form, and then I will get a hold of you in a couple days, and we will get a time on the calendar. And I just started with this client recently, and she said, knowing what I know now, and her daughter's a junior, I would have hired you at the beginning of freshman year. What you offer is really great. Our high school counselors have been no help at all. They were so frustrated. I also see the great value of having our daughter work with someone else on this, especially with a professional. It's tough budget-wise, but we see the value of the investment and will make the sacrifices needed to make this work. So just recently, and I hate when this happens. I'm glad I can help them, but it's tough. Her daughter's a junior, and so some of her options are limited because of where she's at, and her time crunch is very real. And I'm really sad that she's going to a private high school, and the school just didn't tell them anything when the tests were just, there was so non-information. And I'm seeing that myself. I've got one of my sons is in a private school, and they're not telling him anything. And I have another one, just because my sons are quirky, that's in a public school, and they're not sending any information home either. So unless you know what to do, because you just know what to do, or you're going to go look it up or hear from another parent maybe, and you may or may not have the correct information, you're just really left on your own, which is a shame. As I've worked with students and their families, I developed a number of gifts and guides and resources. They include the invaluable campus visit guide, so you know how to arrange a visit, whom to see, what questions to ask. I've got a personal achievements resume creation guide to help students really put together their achievements resume, because they have no idea really what they've done. Sometimes they need to put together a portfolio in various different areas. That's not just for the arts. I've really helped them put that together. It builds their confidence, and it prepares them to apply. It also prepares them to know what to do in the future as they're going through their high school years. I also have many, many articles on college prep related topics, SAT changes and the FAFSA, and the SAT and ACT have both added test dates in the summer. What does that mean, and how do you use them? I've got resource guides, the Ultimate College List Building Guide, the one that I'll be sending you or giving you information in a few minutes so you know how to get the 100 most generous colleges in the United States, what you need to know about your EFC, schools that don't provide merit aid, so that complete list, 6 ways to cut the cost. So these all come with my consulting, for my consulting clients, as well as I have online courses, because I recognized a few years ago that for some families, personal one-on-one consulting is just not the right solution for them. So the students can take my courses online. They all have 10 videos of me sharing my best tips and guidance for each step of the journey. They, in addition to the information-packed videos, they get all those prep guides. These courses will guide your student, preparing him or her to save thousands on college and win big scholarships. So if you want to register, again, you'll need to go to my website, and I'll have this up shortly. Under the services tab, there's online college prep courses with more information about what's in all of them. And the price, in order to help more families, has been lowered. They were $750. Slide didn't get updated. They're $499 now. You'll see that on my website. And then I wanted to also mention, so there's the URL, sorry. Oh, yes. Let me share with you what Valerie had to say. Valerie's a professional project manager, and she thought, I could do this myself. So for over a year now, she's had a second job. She'll admit that at this point, she was penny wise and pound foolish in not engaging me to do more for her family. Her services are not cheap, but you get what you pay for. So they only periodically would have me do a little consulting here on an hourly basis. And she has a word to the wise, which is why I share what she wrote. If you decide to take on the college research and admissions process yourself, you need to be unfailingly organized, ready to nag your kids regularly, and ready to spend hours and hours and hours of your free time over months. It's no fun to do this yourself. So if you can find the money, save yourself the grief. If I knew then what I know now, I would have happily signed on the dotted line. And that's always makes me cry when I hear this. If I knew then what I know now, like, yes. So always trying to get to families with younger students so that they can get the most benefit. Those are the 2 links to sign up for a consultation. If you're not sure what makes the most sense for you, or you just want to have a conversation about your family, we can go ahead and have a consultation. It doesn't, it's not mandatory that you engage me for my services or for the classes. So if you just want to have a consultation, we can do that, or I can help you assess your situation and help make recommendations to you about what would be the best way forward for your family. I also wanted to share another story. Last year, I worked with Bree and her family, short for Gabriella. So no, it's funny, I had 2 of them. And on a periodic consulting basis, they have a modest income. They live in San Diego, and Bree's the oldest of 3. And her big dream was to go to Oxford. But it was extremely quickly clear to me that that wasn't going to be possible because of very, very high admissions criteria as an international student, as well as the affordability side. They just weren't going to be able to make this happen. So I showed them American schools that have study abroad programs at Oxford. They had no idea that such programs existed. They also didn't want to go beyond their public universities because they thought that was the best economic price that they were going to get. And her mom later said, we wouldn't have dreamed of looking at private schools. Their prices are out of our league. But Catherine showed us the way. Bree's heading off to Sarah Lawrence College at a price we can manage, at a price less than the local University of California school. So she's going to a better school that has what she wants for less than the local public university, which was also a really good school. Bree's in her freshman year, she's doing great. Oh yeah, and then to get the 100 most generous American colleges and university resource that I mentioned earlier, go to my website, and on my homepage there's a form right there at the top, and once you fill that out, it should come to your email immediately. So some questions that I know have come other avenues. Do I need to file the FAFSA more than once? Yes, you must file the FAFSA for every school year. So if your student goes to college for 4 years, you'll file it 4 years. If your student goes to college 6 years, you're going to file it 6 times. Can you watch this again? There's so many good tips, couldn't keep up, etc. The slides weren't right. Yes, I will. You'll automatically get sent to a link of the recording of what happened now. And as I said, I will find time shortly to re-record this so that the sound and the slides are together. And then I'll send that link out to everyone who registered for this as well. And that would be something you'll be able to watch more than once. One question I got was, my son's a sophomore, can you work with him, or do we miss out by not starting last year? Let's have a consultation. While starting work together during freshman year is best, I often start with students during their sophomore year and occasionally even during the junior year. So let's meet and discuss it. You mentioned that AP tests are given in May at schools. When and where are the other tests given? So the AP tests are only given at brick and mortar high schools, your public and private physical high schools, and they're given in the first 2 weeks of May. The other exams are given at testing sites all across the country. So you'll need to go to the College Board's page on CLEP and search for schools in your area, and go to getcollegecredit.com to see where the DSST scores are. International Baccalaureate, you have to take the International Baccalaureate curriculum in your high school, so those are given at those high schools, and you can't, like the AP tests, a homeschooler or independent student can come onto a campus and take it, but that's not true for an International Baccalaureate. Oh, and the links, let me show those links again because somebody's asking about that. Is it possible to get academic merit scholarships if you're not a 4.0 student? The answer is yes, absolutely. Do you have to have a top ACT or SAT score? No. Oh yeah, what about, I get asked this a lot. What about going to community college then transferring? Is this a good idea? Sadly, it's not working out that way, the way it used to. 80% of community college students intend to transfer. Most of them will not transfer. And only 6% of them will have a degree in 4 years. Only 14% will have a degree in 6 years. So this path to a degree, sadly, is not working well for most students at all. So many of us still remember when it was our turn, it was pretty easy to go to community college for 2 years and transfer and be done in 4. Not so these days. And there's a variety of reasons for that. There's a whole bunch of research that's been done on all of this. And we had President Obama pushing for increased graduation rates. This is part of why. So if you have more questions, please go to CelticCollegeConsultants.com, click the Meet With Us button on the middle of the page, and sign up. I'll be in touch within a few days to schedule your personal consultation. Thank you again.